Hello and welcome to Manibil. This will be part 5 of my deconstruction of the Keto Academy series on Analytic Idealism by Bernardo Kastrup. And in the last part, I felt I had to make a disclaimer about the statements that Bernardo made around choking and headshots and brain damage and so on, right? Which I found to be, well, if not explicitly encouraging, of course not, but very sort of implicitly. And I know he said that he's himself taken drugs, right? And it's sort of this youth is sniffing glue, and what's it, hyperventilation, or these kinds of not himself making a disclaimer about, yeah, well, when you do this, when you have a bullet through your head, you might become a genius. It's sort of, if I'm not, if people go and do it, it's sort of, in my opinion, it's on their own bill, even if they have been listening to Bernardo Kastrup and even this deconstruction, right? It's on their own account. But I don't want to push the idea. I want to step back and say no. This is not a very disclaimer like stating that I am not encouraging in any shape or form this, right? And I know I might be appealing to implicitly that I think that people tend to be stupid or something like that. No, but there are people who are sort of more prone to whatever, right? And I don't want to push the flame. What's that called in English? Don't want to bring more wood to the fire, so to say, right? So I want to make sure that my point of view comes across about this, and I think it's a highly unempathetic approach to presenting ideas, just stating things like that, right? That can potentially be very harming for somebody who might be sort of, I've heard about these young kids, teenagers, changing their sex because they have been so filled with propaganda about LGBT and it's, masculinity is toxic and, whatever shit, right? And if they have sort of some homosexual problems they're dealing with in the first place, and then they go and change their sex, it's sort of, there are people who are sensitive at a particular point in their life, and they might be encouraged to do something that they will very well regret later, right? So I just want to disclaim any connection with these statements. They just arrived out of the blue, in my opinion. I know that I've heard it mentioned by Bernardo Kastrup a few times before, but it was presented in a way, I believe, that was more scientific, you could say, something like that. In this case, it just sounded like, it came across to me almost as an encouragement, right? And I just want to distance myself completely from that. Another thing I want to bring up is the black swan principle he appealed to, right? In the last bit, I think, or was it the one before? A black swan is that, if you have a rule that says all swans are white, if a black swan arrives, you have disproven your theory, sort of, right? And the idea is, if Bernardo Kastrup can find a flaw in the materialist philosophy, he can discard it, right? And I'm not a proponent of that kind of approach, because just because there's a missing windscreen or one wheel missing on your car, let's say, and it can't drive, or people are driving around with 3 wheels, it doesn't mean that you have to discard in the idea of cars, right? You just put in the 4th wheel or change things to the correct understanding. It's this. He wants to get rid of materialism. And find, the more things I can point to that is flawed about this philosophy, the more right I am in discarding it. While at the same time he's using science, which is obviously based on thinking that is materialist, right? So it's sort of it's fluffy, right? It's not rigid philosophy he's doing, in my opinion. And he's sort of cherry picking shit here and there that fits the bill and so on, right? And maybe you can do that if you want to prove, that somebody stole your car or something like that. Then you're sort of cherry picking evidence that points in that direction, and that, without further ado, that's fine with me, right? But when you're doing ground floor philosophy, you can't start out by saying there's something who's doing it wrong over there. Therefore, it's like saying, if I can come up with an analogy, right? Those who are riding the cars with 3 wheels on it are doing it wrong. It doesn't work. Therefore, you should buy my bicycles, right? It's like, no, that's a bad argument, right? And the other point I want to get across is, if I can find flaws in his philosophy, right? For instance, begging the question or things like that, can I discard his philosophy, right? He should, in the same moment as he says, he will disregard, for instance, materialism based on a black swan kind of argumentation event, right? Then people should do the same with his. I mean, if that's the principle he follows, then it's a principle, right? That a principle is not confined to a particular person or anything like that, right? Or a particular philosophy. Yes, my philosophy, you can use this principle, but you can't use this principle in your philosophy to attack my philosophy, right? So just listen for black swan stuff in what he's presenting, and then you can discard it, right? That's what he says himself, right? Just remember that. Okay. The Keto part 4 is called Analytic Idealism Explained. Okay, so I've been looking forward to this, right? Explanation of Analytic Idealism.
The world is not physical. It is not material. It is material only in the colloquial sense, in the sense that there are colloquially material things around us, but they are not quantitative in essence. They must be qualitative in essence, because qualities is all we really know by direct acquaintance. Qualities are nature's given. They precede theory.
I have to, sorry,
qualities are what we have before we
was a
begin
little off piste while I was drinking. I have to listen to
theory.
This again.
Qualities are what we have before things around us, but they are not quantitative in essence. It is material. The world is not physical. It is not material.
So now he's saying the world again, right? And he has, as far as I remember, used 4 different terms for that realm. The world, reality, universe, and nature, I think, right? Are there overlappings, or are they 4 different areas or what, right? It's not a black swan. Rather something completely different. It's just bad philosophy. It's a bad presentation, right? If you had invented a new gadget, whatever, a new thing, that iPhone, right? And then you have Steve Jobs presenting this object, right? He calls it a telephone, and then he calls it a navigation GPS object, and then he calls it a stick to your ear screen, touch screen, right? And then iPhone, and then you would say, well, are you talking about the same object here, or what, right? I mean, it's like, why don't you call it iPhone from start to finish, right? And it's annoying. And he's also, I struggle to find a description of an insight, or when he says around us, what does he mean? Because he says us, So I must be involved in it. He's talking to me, he's talking to something, and I'm a me receiving that something, right? Or receiving that talk. So, to the best of my understanding, he's communicating with an outside, right? So he's saying those experiences around him, but those experiences can't be around him, right? Because they must be inside him, right? According to his own standards of an inside-outside dichotomy. So why does he say it's around him? He is appealing to the same paradox and use of it, as if it's a functional idea that he's correctly criticizing materialism for. How does it work? He says, no, it's just experiences, right? But he's apparently treating that dashboard as an outside that is not the real outside. Or what? I mean, you tell me, man, right? I am confused here.
It is material only in the colloquial sense, in the sense that there are colloquially material things around us, but they are not quantitative in essence. They must be qualitative in essence, because qualities is all we really know by direct acquaintance. Qualities are nature's given. They precede theory. Qualities are what we have before we begin abstracting and theorizing. So what is this qualitative world? How can we make sense of the fact that we seem to inhabit the same world? That's what I'm going to talk about now.
We seem to inhabit the same world? How? No, please, mate. You are lumping a few axioms in here as if it's sort of given to you, right? The world we inhabit. But if I am a dashboard, I can't say we are all inhabiting my dashboard. That's ridiculous. Then you're saying that I am a dial on your dashboard. I'm not a fucking dial, right? Because I am having the dial of you, your outside version, maybe you could say, right? On my dashboard. So we are not inhabiting the same world. If there's something that is in the same realm, then it's not something we have access to. Like, I don't have access to that which the brain might be a representation of, the skull and my body may be a representation of, and whatever I consider the outside of my body may be a representation of. I only inhabit my world, my inner world, right? And that's why I'm saying, how do you get to that outside world if all you have is this I call inner? So why are you labeling as inner? Why don't you just say my world, right? Why is it an inner world compared to an outer world? Why do you, all of a sudden, where does that dichotomy pop up? From what does it pop up, right? And what I am saying is when you scrutinize your experience, there's actually nothing about it when you don't interpret anything, right? You don't interpret anything about it. The bare bone experience doesn't come with something that says, and this is, of course, an outside, right? Or a representation of an outside. There is none, in my opinion. What that idea, or that it's an interpretation of your experience, you're bringing it to the table. Your mind, your metaconscious mind is bringing it to the table saying, I am treating this as an outside. And that's why I want to formulate this leap as an axiom that says, I am treating this as an outside, right? When I'm experiencing Bernardo Kastrup, I am not experiencing what might be out there. I'm just labeling some part of my experience as a Bernardo Kastrup outside my experience. Axiomatically, right? If I have an idea of an outside, it's a story I'm telling myself. I'm not saying there's anything wrong in telling yourself that story. I am doing that also. But the way he presents it, and a lot of idealists apparently presents it, is it's given to you that it's a representation of an outside. That doesn't follow from the experience. I will reject that, right? Until somebody very, very clearly states to me how they get to that from their colors and their sounds and their tastes and so on, right?
Now, that's the philosophy of analytic idealism, which I argue for. Let's start from the beginning.
Good idea. So why did it take you 3 other, about 45 minutes to get to the beginning of your story, right? Why did it take so long, right? You had to, point to something that was wrong, right? You have to label the competition as idiots so that you make sure that people have the right understanding that you are the one arriving before you are presenting the idea, right? You are sweetening your own well rather than poisoning. You are the opposite of poisoning the well. You are sweetening the well, right? You give people an understanding of how brilliant your philosophy is before you actually present your philosophy, right? That's what sophists do, right? Now, just because it's a sophist trick doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong. It just adds to the list of things I don't find encouraging about his way of presenting his philosophy, right?
There is an objective world out there beyond our individual minds. That is self-evident. If you were where I am right now, you would describe...
It is self-evident. Now, I don't buy into anything that is called self-evident. Nothing arrives with an explanation. Please, where does it arrive from? That explanation, right? Where does it come from? Through a sixth sense, that where all the manuals to your experiences arrive, that says, yeah, it is given that whatever, right? And even in that case where you had a sixth sense where the manuals arrive, you still had to read and interpret the manuals, right? There's nothing given about the colors that says it's an outside. It's also a very good point. I stopped the video. It's sort of a divine intervention, right? It's a given. Now, this is sort of, he's just jumping over the most important leap, the most important step in his philosophy. How does he get to that outside, right? It's not good enough to say, of course. It's simply not valid. This is beyond black swan thinking, right? This is just, I'm going to say it's the case, and you better believe me because I have 2 PhDs, right? If you can do philosophy by saying, well, it's self-evident, why can't you say that all the time? I'm just saying, this is the case, that is the case, this is the definition of that. Yeah, but it's self-evident, right? So he starts off the most important point and says it's self-evident, and then he goes into explanations of aspects later that is obviously of lesser importance than the first leap away from his own solipsist experience. Oh, man.
The building where I am in a way very consistent with my own description of it. So clearly we inhabit a world that is beyond us.
But when you're saying we, you are taking the leap that experience you have on that dashboard, that dial you're seeing there is the same as you, the pilot, in the cockpit, right? That dial there is the same as you in the cockpit having the experience of the dials. So the dials is the same of that, is the same as that which has the experience of the dial. That's what you're saying without making that axiom that says, okay, I'm going to treat that dial as the same as someone who is having the same kind of cockpit experience as I have, right? See, that was an axiom. He's just stepping over as if it's sort of given, right? In these few seconds here, there's possibly 4 or 5 axioms he just pretends is given to him as if it's sort of divine intervention or something like that, right? That doesn't work. It's stupid philosophy, right? The deeper level you get in your philosophy, the more important these axioms are. And him just stepping over them, that is as if it's sort of handed to him. And he has to tell you it's given to me also, right? Not only is it given to him, he just says it's given to you, right? As if he's some kind of, magic being that can step up as a qualia and tell me how I should understand my qualia. Oh, man, right? I don't buy it.
That is beyond our individual minds. But the fact that it is...
What is beyond our individual minds? So he's saying outside him, outside his mind, there is other mind, and parts of that other mind are specific, cut off minds, like his own mind being cut off from a larger part of mind, something like that, right? This is going very fast, right? These are the important steps. I need to be in agreement with this, right? You need to allow me to agree with this or not. And that's why you need to make these axioms, so I can say, okay, I see where you're going. I'm not going that way. So we can part ways, right? Rather than sort of trying to, academically inflict your thinking on me as if it's given, right? It's academic. It's self-evident, right? Apparently it's not self-evident that a swan is white. So what is self-evident about those colors, right? If the colors can be wrong, your ideas of the colors can be wrong, right? What you claim to be self-evident might not actually be self-evident until you find something that makes it not self-evident. It's like the guy saying, oh, all the swans are white, until they get to whatever, New South Wales or what the fuck in Australia. Oh my God, there's a black swan, right? My theory is done, right? He's sitting there, yeah, I have all, this is self-evident. Until he have an experience that makes it not self-evident, right? Do I have to sit and wait here until he might find out that what he's basing it on is actually not self-evident? Doesn't work, right? You have to do the axioms and state them clearly, right?
Outside our individual minds does not mean that it is non-mental. The thoughts of another person are outside your individual mind, but they are...
How do you know there are thoughts outside your mind? How do you experience thoughts? You don't, right? And this has also been known as the problem of other minds, or maybe the zombie problem, right? Depending on what angle you want to think of it. So now he's making that axiomatic leap also. There are these minds out there. I mean, he's just saying it as if it's sort of given. It's sort of, oh, of course. I mean, why do I have to state this? It's obvious, right? No, it's not fucking obvious that there are minds beyond your own mind. I mean, how can he seriously sit there and think that this is good philosophy? I'm not saying necessarily the conclusions he's presenting are invalid philosophy, but the philosophy is the thinking between the conclusions, right? That's what I'm interested in. One of the thinkings between the conclusions is the axioms. To get from one conclusion to the next conclusion. Sometimes, a lot of times, I would say in metaphysics, you need to state some axioms, right? Because you are limited by what you have access to.
Are mental. The emotions of your neighbor are outside your individual mind, but they are mental. That there are...
I'm lost count of how many axioms he potentially stepping over and pretending just to be given to him, right? This is the important end of the philosophy. If he doesn't get off on a good start, I don't give a fuck what he ends up with, because he might just be pulling shit out of his ass, right? I'm just having some sound and visual experiences here that I interpret in a certain way. I could just say, yeah, interesting sounds, yeah, interesting colors, right? And go about my own philosophy, right? So if I want to take this seriously, I am working from a lot of axioms in order to get to the point where I can say I'm going to treat this as philosophy. That is what is also taken for granted, right? And he's presenting his own philosophy without axioms, working from the idea that I have the sufficient axioms in order to understand his sounds and colors and so on as philosophy.
Our mental processes beyond our individual minds is also a very intuitive and, I would say, established fact.
What is an established fact? Now he's appealing to facts, right?
Processes beyond our individual minds is also a very intuitive and, I would say, established fact.
An established fact? Well, how can it be a fact, right? Please let me understand your idea or your definition of a fact. Because if it's something that you can't experience, how can it possibly be a fact, right? You have to experience something in order for it to be a fact. Otherwise, it's just mystic bullshit, right? And if it's an experience, it's something on the inside of your fucking mind there, right? So you're not describing the outside then, right? So he's violating this paradox that he's blaming materialism for using. I mean, can you believe it, man, right? Why can't he see he's doing this shit, right? What's the matter with him? What's the matter with why if he has 2 PhDs and he's rubbing shoulders with the biggest mind in philosophy and so on, why is nobody telling him he's stupid, man, right? Never in a billion years am I going to take this seriously, right?
So there is no counterintuitiveness, no contradiction in the hypothesis that there can be mental stuff beyond your individual mind.
And no, just because I can refute outright that there's mental stuff, now you're, inventing the term stuff, I think, right? Well, what the hell is stuff now? What's that? Stuff? It's made of mental. Now you're calling it mind and mental stuff, and we're going into this plurality of terms to describe the same thing, right? In alignment with the universe and world and reality and all these terms that are being used, right, left and right, without any coherence, right? Okay, so that's one of the biggest beefs I have with with idealists, is that it's like they're saying, there is an area that I don't have access to. That means other people don't have access to it either. So if I start out by saying, no, you don't have access to it, but I am special. I have some special magical, sauce in my mind that makes me able to sort of lift the lid and peek in and have an idea of what is out there, right? And if I say to them, well, you can't disprove that there's mind out there, then I'm just going to say, of course, there's mind out there, right? That's stupid. That's stupid argumentation. Just because I can't disprove that there's a teapot around Jupiter doesn't mean there is a teapot around Jupiter, right? This is the same kind of fallacious argumentation. The only thing you can say is, if you create that outside world, in my opinion, is I cannot get to it. All I have is my representations. And what I'm philosophizing about is, how the hell do I work with these representations? That's all you have to deal with. You have to leave this area alone because you can't get there. And if you think you've got there, you haven't got there. You're just screwing around with your mental ideas and so on and convincing yourself you got there, right? Because if you need some experience to have anything to go with, it was because of your experiences that you came up with the idea of the outside. If you didn't have any experiences, there was nothing. And when those weird colors and sounds appeared, you all of a sudden started to say, oh, I guess there's an outside. So if you need experiences to have an idea of an outside, then that which you have is the experiences. Because you need the experiences to have an idea of the outside, right? That means you don't have access to the outside.
The world is beyond our individual minds. So it might as well be mental stuff.
Oh, it might as well be. Oh, yeah. Or it might as well be, gummy bears, right? It might be gummy bears. You can come up with whatever you want, right? This is the oldest trick in the book, right? And this is, it's an area where you can't go and check. And therefore, God is in the heavens where you can go and check. He doesn't live around the corner, right? No. He's somewhere where you can't go and check, and hell is down below where you can't go in the fires of Mount Doom, right? You can't go there and check, so you have to just believe what the priest says. That's the oldest fucking trick in the sophist book, right?
That's the position of analytic idealism. The world, the universe, what exists is mental, but not your mentation, not my mentation alone. Not even the mentations of all living beings put together. It's made of transpersonal mental processes. Mental processes.
So now we just conjures up a term, transpersonal, whatever the term, I have to hear it again, right?
It's made of transpersonal mental processes.
What is made? That which is between those minds he doesn't have access to. Those things he established without any action or any logical leaps or any description, any philosophy of any kind. He's just pretending, of course, their minds are there. And of course, there's something between all these minds. And that which is between is just transpersonal mental processes. Well, is he just making stuff up as he goes? Because that's what I'm hearing, right? How does he get from colors, sounds, tastes, smells, and feels, right, to transpersonal mental processes? I mean, what can I say, man, right? This is, it's Crazyville, this, right? It is unphilosophical. It is a mystical in nature. This is not philosophy, right? He might have some philosophy there in his brain somewhere, but it's not what he's stating. He's just giving me, pulling this out of my ass, pulling that out of my ass, and, as if it's just, I can just state what the fuck I want without connecting it, right? If you can do that, you can come up with whatever you want. So why would I listen to you in particular, right? Why would I just go with my own philosophy? Why would I listen to you if you can just come up with whatever you want, disconnected from any axioms, any philosophy of any kind, any definitions of any kind, right? Truth and knowledge and objectivity not defined and so on, right? Why the hell would I listen to you? Why is this important philosophy? Because you're actually not really presenting any philosophy. You're just giving me your conclusions of some potential philosophy that I haven't been enlightened on yet, right?
Mental processes out there, which present themselves to us upon observation as what?
Present themselves. that is sort of an appeal to some kind of will, that there's some aspect out there, yes, this little dissociated mind over there, I need to tell them what is going on out here, right? This is crazy, man, right? Presents itself, so it it decomposes all of that outside into some kind of presentation that are colors and sounds and so on. So how does mind change itself to a color? And how does it know that? How does it get to, oh yes, of course, that color is what needs to be there in order for that meta-consciousness in there that the big mind apparently understands that it has. Otherwise, why would it present itself if it wasn't sure that there's somebody on the inside to understand it, right? I mean, there's so many things here that are unexplained, right? I mean, it's mind-boggling how ridiculously convoluted this is without any explanation of any kind, right? Why don't I see anybody criticize this dude, right? Because it's completely crazy, this, right? It's crazyville. Come on, people, man, right? You have to do better than this. If you want to change the world and the big crusade against materialism and so on, give me a fucking break, man, right? This is only going to solidify materialism. No, I'm not going down that fucking mystic road, right? What the hell have you been smoking, man, right? Have you shot yourself in the head or something? Or you know, are you trying to strangle yourself? And don't do this at home, right? Oh, crazyville, man.
What we colloquially call matter. And matter is therefore a representation on our internal dashboard. We are pilots.
So he is taking away my ability to make judgment or being the one who interprets my experiences. All what you have apparently is something outside saying this is what you need to know. I mean, the more I listen to this Bernardo guy, right, the more I get this. I mean, is the whole fucking world gone crazy or what? I mean, it's okay, fair enough. We have the heart problem, right? We have the problem of other minds. Let's deal with it in a materialist fashion, but just realizing the inherent problems that are sort of built into the thinking, and then retract a bit and see how we can solve the problem, rather than starting up and saying there's a big mind, a transpersonal mind out there that presents on the slideshow on your inside what you need to know about that outside that you can't have access to, and is, oh my fucking God, man. Ah.
Flying by instruments throughout life. The physical world is what shows up on the dials of the dashboard. But the world that is measured by the airplane's sensors, in other words, by our retinas, our eardrums, the surface of the tongue, the lining of the nose, and even the outer...
Yeah, but those ears and those nose and that skin, that's a representation on your dashboard also. Right? You are just saying, okay, yeah, they are representation of that which are responsible for that qualia, but you can't say that they're before the qualia, because you needed the qualia in the first place to have an idea of those sense organs, right? So now he's sort of, without clarifying, he's actually appealing to that paradox that he is trying to refute, right? He's not saying it explicitly, but implicitly, there's no other way to interpret it, right? Give me a break, man.
Layer of the skin, the stuff that is measured by our sense organs is not physical. What is measured is transpersonal mental processes.
Now, and this is all, it's not physical. And when you tell people this is not, what you think is not the case, the next question they will start to say, but what is it then? And then he said, yeah, but now I'm going to tell you, it's transpersonal mental processes, right? And then people say, what the fuck is that? Well, let me sit here for an hour and try to convince you, rubbing your ears with my, sophistry, and then you'll end up being, convinced that I'm right. Give me a break, man. He's just a sort of weirdo sophist, right?
And upon measurement, those transpersonal mental processes out there are represented to ourselves on our dashboard as we call the physical world around us. Physical in the colloquial sense, not the strict philosophical sense. That's the idea. Now,
I think that's the idea. Okay, yeah, okay. It's an idea, apparently. It's not philosophy. That's the idea. I have had an idea. I have had an epiphany. The big man outside told me through my senses, apparently, how I should understand the outside and how it becomes my senses. Can you see any flaws in that thinking? I mean, it's a smorgasbord of stupidity. This, right? It's the philosophy he attempts to inflict on me, or the lack of it, that is the problem. It's not necessarily the conclusions. It is what is between the conclusion that is completely missing. He's just pulling it out of his ass, as I say, right? And he's just, he's appealing to those who are a little doubtful about whether or not materialism and science is going to give us all the answers, right? And in particular, maybe it's not going to give you any answers about ethics, right? Or moral principles or anything like that. Obviously not, right? So those neuroscientists who are sticking electrodes on people and saying, I think I'm seeing this and seeing that, it starts to get problematic, and they're banging the head against the hard problem without realizing why there is a hard problem. And there's some fundamental metaphysics they haven't dealt with, right? So he's attempting to say, well, don't listen to these materialists. Go over in my camp and I have all the woo-woo shit, preconceived ideas I'm working from that goes more in line with your the religion you were enforced on you as a child, and all this baggage, then I can then justify for you, so you feel good about yourself, right? And your parents, and your peers, and your priests, and your politicians, and whatever, right? I'm not seeing very much actual philosophy here, right? Just dumping conclusion in my face is not going to crack it, mate, right? I'm not buying that. I'm not buying that. Give me the fucking steps between the conclusions. And if you can't reason your way there, you need to use these axioms, as I say, right? So, I think we'll leave here in 3 minutes and 26, and I'll just say, please share, like, and subscribe, and give me a comment. Let me know what you think. And otherwise, have a nice day. See you in the next one.